The late house in the vinery had muscats, white grapes, gross Colemans, gross Marocs, Lady Downs and black Hamburgs. The early house next to it had golden Hamburgs, black Hambro, Maidstfield Court, gross Marocs, and as you came out of the vinery door to the corner of the entrance there was a lovely old wisteria growing, and you can actually still see the fixings where that wisteria was. As you continue along the wall to the garden's cottage, there were nectarines and Royal George peaches, Alexandra nobiles, a Princess of Wales peach, a George peach, and then the wall turns again and starts running from north to south, where you had an apricot and a Bourboss eating pear old that was right by the entrance there. And past that then there were more plum trees, apricot trees and Victoria plums, until we come all the way down this wall here, passing the view of our lovely church in the background to this corner here. And as we turn again to the outbuildings we first saw, there were Victoria plums, eating apples, stewing pears and other variety of plums, until we pass the garden door, and there you see the potato house where we started. That had fruit rooms, stoke holes, and the other side of that is where the schedule started. I'm actually stood in the position of what I believe to be the centre point of the two central walks that divided this garden up. One ran from the gateway where we entered this garden to the garden door at the other side. The other walk crossed that and had a holly hedged walk dividing the garden in the other direction, with lovely holly hedges on either side. The whole garden was divided up into 6 sections, all of which were producing. And what we have to remember as well, the earlier planting that was described was purely on the inside of the wall, and that covers a 1/4 of a mile of fruit trees. On the exterior of the wall were also fruit trees. So in total, this garden had a 1/2 mile of fruit trees. And we have several articles in relation to this garden from a gardening magazine of 1830 and also a gardening magazine of 1888. And here we have a letter from the gardener, a man called William Buck, in 1824. The Elford estate was actually part of an estate of 3 main houses. One was Levens Hall in Cumbria, and the other one was Ashted House in Surrey. And clearly from the information we have here, this garden provided produce to both those grand houses. It's from Mr. Buck on the 18th of June 1824, and he talks about the orange trees being now quite ready to be sent off. They're out of blossom and have a very fine crop of young fruit. He asks how they wish them to be sent, and says probably the best is to send them by canal from the wharf at Faisley, and they can be sent either to Paddington or to the City Basin Wharf in London. And what he asks for is the Ashted farm cart to pick them up with straw in the cart and water them to convey them safely back to Ashted. He also talks of sending trees northward to Levens in the Lake District, and it's nice to think of a garden like this producing trees for such a beautiful place as Levens Hall. He does conclude and say, "I am very much in need of a remittance, and as soon as is your pleasure, the garden expenditure is £115, 6 shillings and a penny." He describes the garden and says the garden is looking well, having a fair crop of fruit, except the apricots, which are rather thin this season. All the other trees have a fair crop for their age and strength, and we hope for a favourable season to bring them to maturity. And he writes and signs himself, "Honourable Sir, your most obedient, your most dutiful servant, William Buck." And that really gives us a flavour of what life was here 150 years ago. What is the future going to hold for these gardens? What we want to recreate is the feeling of time gone by, to preserve the rural heritage of this lovely village we live in. It would be so lovely for people to be able to walk past the church, which is an unspoilt area, into this further area which will be a restored Victorian garden, a place that is peace and tranquility, where perhaps just for a little while people can come away from their humdrum daily lives and enjoy taking part in a project or just enjoying visiting it. And it's very much intended that this is going to be a free garden where people can come and spend their time. How are we going to achieve it? Well, there's going to be a number of ways in which we're going to get support for this. We're going to look for grant funding. Our main targets in that direction is the Heritage Lottery, also other aspects of the lottery, and there is a Staffordshire Environmental Fund which are promising opportunities for funding. Funding is one issue. The next issue we have is how we're actually going to physically achieve it. We built that playground by people giving of their time freely. The village plumber connected the water, the village electrician did the electric. That philosophy is going to be brought in to this garden. In fact, you could almost call it a free garden, built by people who care, for people to come and enjoy themselves freely. That was the wish of the Squire. On top of that, there is the British Trust for Conservation Volunteers. They have visited the site and they're keen to become involved in this project. The British Trust for Conservation Volunteers will bring groups of volunteers, perhaps several times a week, from potentially Birmingham and Stoke. And they will take sections of responsibility for the garden and specific projects such as fencing, pathways here and there, and that's how that will be achieved. The second way in which we're going to import help into this project is another aspect of this that is dear to my heart. We're only a few miles away from Swinburne Hall. Now that's a young offenders institution where young men are locked up for crimes they've committed. I'm a firm believer that there has to be a way back for those young men. And what I would like to see happen here is to involve them in this project during the very latter part of their sentences, at a time when they've been carefully and individually assessed by the institution in the prison, that they are satisfied that there is no risk in terms of them coming out into the community and sort of bridging that gap between incarceration and returning back to life in the normal community. I want them involved in this project because I like the idea of them working physically hard for a period of 6 months. Not sweeping up, not doing some mundane job, but actually working on a section of this garden. And when they're working on this section of garden for 6 months, they will see something that they have created. And I quietly believe that that will be something most of those young men will not have experienced before in their life.